Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Well, we're going to continue some of our landscape studies, and today, I've been having a lot of requests from you for doing something a little bit more along the southwest. So I went down and grabbed some of my reference photos in the southwest, and I picked some out here. Now, the original photo is a little bit too blue. I wanted to get more of those nice orangey colors of the southwest, so I just added a little bit of color to it into my Photoshop, put that out here. There's a lot of things I like about the photo. There's a lot of things I don't like about the photo. So guess what? We're going to draw our own. I like to do that. I don't copy photos. I like to use them for reference and tell you why I change things here and there to make it a more, a painting that I enjoy a lot better. Let's talk about our colors. So, this is the same normal palette that I use a lot on the YouTube videos, except for our eliminated Dark Light Yellow today. We really don't need it. I have Hansa Yellow, Yellow Oxide, Naphthol Red Light, Burnt Sienna. We have Pine Green, Phthalo Blue. We have Red Violet, Quinacridone Violet. This is a color I used in the last landscape and stuff with you. It is a mixed color. It is medium beige, and it's just a nice go-to color for some medium tones, neutral tones I use. And I put out a lot of white, nice thick white. This is my Daravan open medium. I'll use this in thicker areas that I want to keep the paint wet for a long time, but also thick. And then I also have out here a cap of the extender medium. This is the Heritage extender medium, and it has it thins out the paint. It gives it a long drying time, but thins out the paint, okay? So what I'm going to do is use some reference. Here onto it, I have just a regular board, and on this board, what I did was it is cut it out. It's 20 inches across this way, 14 inches this way. So if you want to add a little more sky, a little more river in the front and use a 16 by 20 canvas, you can go ahead and do that. But I like the board. And I prepped it with some of our canvas prep medium, and when I used it, I think you might be able to see it, I used a sponge and I leave some textures in here. Now I like to do that, especially when I'm painting the southwest. Those who followed in some of the landscape ones, you see, whenever I'm going to make a lot of rocks or anything like that, I like to have some textures on the surface of the board or the canvas, so it tends to pull the highlights off of your brush a little bit different, makes it a little bit more natural, okay? So I like to do that. Okay, let's go in and do some sketching. I'm going to use my long handle brushes. These are my Fusion long handle brushes, and everything I do, all the links for everything I do are down in the video description. So if you have any questions or anything like that, about where I get products, what I do, it's down in the video links below, okay? I'm going to take some I like to sketch with burnt sienna and some water here, and just a small number 6 Fusion. And I'm just going to put in a couple of marks here. I'm going to use this for, this thing here for some ideas. Not real, not going to copy it or anything, but I'm going to come about 3/4 of the way across for the top of that mountain. And I'll put a little, a landmark there, and then it'll go down to a V. And I will allow myself to change some of this. This has another little, let's just round that off just a bit. It's going to come down right about into this area where that river is going to go, right down into there. And so I give myself lots of freedom to change. I am one that I don't like to copy stuff. I like to let colors come off in the brush. Like there's a more of a flat area there. I might give it an extra little bump just to give it some interest. I do, those of you that paint along with me all the time, I like strong horizontals. And so the river, I can put one in somewhere in here. I'm going to come about halfway and about 3/4, 7/8 of the way across. That river is going to come right through here. We'll just bring it out in an angle here and let it die right to the front of the canvas up there. We'll bring a bit of a bump out here. Now I may change some of this, flatten this shoreline out a bit here, so that feels like it's not quite wide enough for me for this painting, so we might change that just a bit. We'll drop the back of this stream right in here. And then our visual plane or journey that we're going to go is going to go right back up through here, right up back through here. So the river's going to wind around. It's going to disappear behind some trees and stuff, and it's going to go back up into there. There are some great, and one of the things that attracted me to this one right away was these alluvial plains that come down here from the mountains down into this area here. And I'm going to want to suggest some of those pretty quickly because I want to be able to keep the power to those. So I'll be suggesting those pretty quickly. I'm going to go up to my 1/2-inch brush, and it's a well-loved 1/2-inch brush. You know, whenever I paint landscapes like this, you know, there's a lot of people like, oh, let's get out there and get some of those new brushes and everything. And I like the old brushes, you know, brushes that I've used for several years and everything. So they're ratty and you get all these different little edges and stuff. I very seldom, you know, I'll paint new brushes on my florals and stuff sometimes, but on the landscapes, boy, I like to be a little wild with it. Okay, let's come in and we'll follow some of the rules of alla prima here. I'm going to thin out this burnt sienna with some extender medium, so it's thin. And in good rules of Premier Coup or alla prima, you know, you're thin into the shadows and you know, more opaque into the light. So I'm gonna thin out the shadows. I'm gonna darken down, cool down this burnt sienna with a little bit of my phthalo blue. Okay, and I'm going to come in here now. I like some of the rockiness here, and that plane is, I just dropped that a little bit too low, but I'm just going to put in just some ideas here, and I'm going to want this a little bit more jagged up here. But what I do is I kind of squint down a little bit, and I'm just going to capture, not perfectly right now, don't try to do anything perfect because you'll stiffen up. Just quickly kind of capture a little bit of where some of the shadows are in this particular painting. Nothing perfect, just grab some real quick ideas and stuff here, and you know, that's all I'm going to do. And just put some of those. So it's going to give me a nice little rougher mountain there. Let's drop a bit of this down here. We got to find our light, you know, on here. The light is coming from the right. That's why we have these very deep shadows here, which, you know, we might intensify with some violets and stuff later on. Here, okay. Now I know it doesn't look like much. Let's step back that camera. And again, today we're filming with 4 cameras. I have 4 monitors here. I have another monitor that I normally look at there. Filming with 4 cameras here, so I have lots of ones to look at. But I like camera 1 here, which is the one I'm talking to you right now. It's 8 feet away. And those of you that paint with me in the studio, you know, I like to get up and get back about 8 feet is what I like as a visual reference. So when I'm looking at that and looking at it, I say, okay, yeah, am I going to be developing depth? What am I doing here at about 8 feet? That's what I like, okay? Now, since we're going to reflect a lot, and I'm going to change some of the things in this river that I think need to be changed to add more interest to the painting, but let's take some of that same color, maybe just a bit more blue, and we're going to have real dark area up here. And I want to put this on as a wash here. We'll put blues and stuff on top of it. Now, this is a little different than you see me paint, rivers and stuff like that before. This is more of a man that I really love, and he changed studying him. Of course, he was a 19th century painter, but studying him changed the way in which I do a lot of stuff, and his name was Albert Debrensky. And Debrensky painted a lot over in Scotland and the moors, but his mountains and rivers and stuff and his color usage of it was just phenomenal. So I like to use it. Now I'm going to warm it up just a bit. Let's just push a bit of this. So you see this a bit where we're going to have some foreground interest right up through here. Now, so what this does is, this is real thin, see? And I'll model this just a bit, and this is going to, see how I did some different brush movements in here. wet. And it's going to have the extender in it here, so it's going to stay wet for a while. But that's going to allow me to put, it's going to carry the colors of the mountain down into the water, which is very important, especially in Dobransky's technique, because he was an indirect painter. And you have what are basically two different types of techniques in art when we break it up into two foundational techniques, direct and indirect. The indirect are more like the Dutch. You see me paint with the Dutch and stuff all the time, where we let layers dry and glaze over and do other things. Directly means you're painting wet into wet. And so you'll intermediate tones that you would get in a glaze, and indirect you're going to get by moving the tones together. Some people call it blending, and I do blend, but in a lot of painting I do, I don't like to blend. I like to paint tones. So I don't like to mix, because when I learned from indirect coming into direct. So I know more about making tones and putting tones on, and I like that way. There's a lot of people that like going direct and doing a little bit of blending and making those other tones. Fantastic stuff. That's great. That's great. It's art. It's all fun. It's all fun. We all have different ways. Okay, I'm going to put that down for just a second. I'm going to go up to my 3/4 inch brush. I'm going to take over here to the side some of my blue and my white, and I'm just going to put in, and see this one, you can barely see that one over there. It's got some of the more violet colors into it because I added some of those into this painting. So I'm going to add a little quinacridone, phthalo blue, quinacridone, and some white. I want to get this up. When you look at this right up in through here, it's about a value 8 or so. So it's fairly light. So let's get this up. Let's thin this out. And I'm going to let this not mix up too well. Let's get just a little violet, not mixed up too well. That's a little bit dark. You can always tell when you get it out on your palette here, or get it onto your board here. And so I'm just going to, and like I do with so many of the landscapes, I just like to draw this around, and I like to create atmosphere in everything that I do. So, and we want a little bit smoother sky today, so that the mountains and stuff come out. So I'm just going to lighten up here a bit here, but we still want some modeling of some color. So I'm going to step back on my brush here and start just manipulating these little strokes, some horizontal, some vertical here. Get some more light in there so I get some different plane. Now, you know, those of you that follow with landscapes know we do darken down. You know, sometimes I'll put a bit of that, that burnt sienna and stuff into it right up here, so I get a little difference into it there. And we can come back and manipulate some of that later, and that will, get more interest. Step back, see if you have some interest in it. If you don't, and grab some more white, just model that through a bit here. That's the atmospherics. See, that's the atmospherics. Some artists leave those brush strokes right in there, but it depends at 8 feet. Now up close, you look at it and you go, oh my God, somebody should give him a mop brush. But back, when you get back a little bit and you allow what's called optical blending to take over, it just works so well. So, for so many years, guys, I made a mistake in that I painted like this always. And then I went and hung my painting on the wall in the house or a gallery or something, and it just looked plastic. It looked flat because it didn't have the movement, the calligraphy of what we call the calligraphy of the brush movement into it that gives it the interest. So you don't always have to, smooth blend out something here. Leave some of those streaks in there like this. Leave some of that in there, sometimes up and down. I mean, just pull that around. That's just good atmospherics, putting atmosphere into the colors. Now, I'll thin some of this down just a bit, and right in here is going to be my receding area. Those of you see that, I like to do this into a painting. I drag something into what we call the atmospheric perspective. So put a little bit of that sky right back there. It's going to cause that area there to recede. Okay, now, some of this sky, you don't see it in this particular painting here, or this particular photo here, because of the angle. the angle at which you take a picture of something on the water is going to see whether or not you see reflections, or you're going to see, or how light that water is going to be. And so that's what we call the viewing angle when you're looking at that into a landscape. And here, because the photographer is taking it so far back, the viewing angle is really shallow. You don't pick up a lot of light. So we won't pick up a lot of light in this particular painting. So I'm just going to darken this sky down just a bit. We'll put a little bit of that violet in there that I like here, and so I'm going to go down to about a 6 or so, a little bit of that burnt sienna in there, and I'm just going to take a couple of real quick little marks of this color horizontal, and I'm going to just add just a bit of that so I can catch. It's nothing perfect, it's just so I can catch the feeling of the water and stuff, or where that water is going to be. Now as that goes back, if I follow the good landscape painters that came before us, they always say you get those lighter atmospheric, so I should lighten that up just a bit going back. Now this is just an initial look, but look at how these tones blend in. I mean, not blend in there, because I don't want to stroke so much that I blend, but watch when I take some of this color right here, right into that do some horizontals and some verticals here, but right into some of that color I pushed before. Don't stroke too many times because you will blend it, but that gives you just a bit more of that movement there. That's nice. Let's go just a touch darker, just a bit of that into that. See, just a couple of swirls across that here, just like that. See, and you'll already start to catch some of the feeling. Just very quickly, I'll step back. You already start to catch very quickly in there the feeling of that water. Does that make sense? And that's what I like to do when I have that. So, we put those colors, those darks down into here. Even though in the photo we'll read it a little more violet and stuff like that later, we can add that. But right now, just with the two colors, the two tones that we're doing of the blue and the burnt sienna, we can create some of that interest within the landscape. Does that make sense? And so you try to visualize that with each of the tones, especially when you're doing something like I can do and changing it. So we'll keep the idea of light and dark. So we got an area there dark. I could go a little bit darker. We could put a little bit of that blue burnt sienna, a little darker, maybe even a bit of that violet into that. But remember, these are shadows, so we should keep it kind of thin. But let's just drag a bit of that. Not too much of it, because it's dark. We don't want to take out everything. Let's just model that in. See, just some marks of it here. Sometimes I move it with my paper towel and stuff, so I don't, take it, too much of a stroke. You don't want to do too long a strokes or anything like that. So when you see me sometimes take a stroke made a little bit longer, I have almost no pressure on my brush. What I'm doing is just incorporating the colors, not blending them as much as I'm incorporating, moving the two tones together there so I can get some interest. See how the little brush mark, and I used to get rid of that. Now I leave that because I know I can come back and do some more things later on to adjust that, to make that a little bit more like water later, but it does give it a nice little interest. Okay, so that's got that major part of it in there. Let's take some of this burnt sienna and a little bit of this blue while we have this, and I'm going to start, when I start painting some of the other areas, I'm going to add a little open medium like I just did. So I'm going to add just a little bit deeper. This is going to be kind of an important one, so I'll make a couple of quick statements of some darker tone, a little bit darker. Shadows have values, and so we'll get those in there. Let's lighten that just a bit, that tone, just lighten it, and whisper it back here so you'll still get the feeling of some of those lights and darks, but we don't want to have too much of a tone. We want those to atmosphere to go back there, okay? All right. Now, before I get going too much, some of the things that really attracted me to this painting was the alluvial plains, the plains that are pulling down from the mountains themselves there. And so I'm going to take some burnt sienna, some medium beige and some white, and I read them slightly yellow, so I'm going to add just a bit of yellow. Medium value here, so I'm up around a 6 to a 7. More, try to keep it up around the 7 because it's going to dry darker. Let's put in a big movement line down this way, which I read in that photo pretty well, which is a nice angular line. And we'll change it into some other rocks and stuff over here. Let's model the color, maybe a bit of blue, bit of burnt sienna, and let's just make some quick little statements here that along the shoreline, but don't disturb too much of that nice horizontal that's dropping down at that angle there. I kind of like that, so I want to preserve that. We have another one here, and it has a bit more burnt sienna in it back here. So change the tone. You know, the angle of the light's going to give you different tones. So let's get a little bit of burnt sienna into that, maybe a bit of yellow here. And it's coming down off of this big one here, which I kind of pulled my shadow too far, and it's coming at that angle there, here, and got a little bit of that yellow coming out there. That's great there. So you can see here as I'm working these two tones, let me just, and I've got a lot of paint in my brush now. I'm painting a lighter area, but I want to pull down, and I want to, so I establish that field, that slope. See, and you're pulling at that angle, and that establishes that slope there of it. So whatever angle you're using, that establishes the slope, okay? So you use your brush very carefully into your angle. So here when I'm looking at this particular painting, and say I pick up this big long thing, now we got to add bushes, rocks, all that, but I pick up that angle and I pick up that angle. I like those two angles on there, and I like how it reads on the at 8 feet. So let me continue on, okay? So we're going to add just a few smaller ones here, maybe even a little bit of the sky color blue into this, and we'll touch just a few of those planes back there. Okay, just a bit of the angles in there. Most of the other parts of this painting up here, let's take some medium beige and some burnt sienna. Do not mix them up real well. We want these to come off. Now, you'll see me use this before when I use a palette knife or a scraper. You know, you see me do a scraper. A scraper works fantastic for this. You just grab some of this tone, grab it like this, okay, and you just start down like this, and see that puts that mottled part of the rock faces in already. See, so the key is don't mix them up too well here, so they come out on your scraper with this, and you get this, a lot of paint really, but you can start pulling down like this and putting in, and sometimes move it around. We will, like what I do is I'll grab some of this other shadow kind of color here, and I'll move some horizontals and some verticals in there. So I start putting in the tones of the face of the rocks here that you got. And then, so this allows me to block it in a bit here, like this. It's not done. This allows me to block it in, and then I can refine it, like I've taken out a lot of my shadows. That's okay, I'm an artist, I'll put them back. Okay, you gotta let that happen, guys. Don't avoid your shadows, because then your mountains become stiff because you avoided your shadows. What happens is, see, I can pull off some of that color this way, and I can start creating these other tones just by pulling it off or pushing and moving those tones together. So there's a lot of different ways. Now, back here, we'll add a little bit of our sky into this, so everything becomes a little softer back here as we put in some of these areas here. Boom. And let's get just a touch more burnt sienna into that here. Okay. Now this one should be a little heavier. We can fix that. But this puts in, see, all I'm looking for right now is just the movement of tone. See, I want to get some of these variations of tone in here. And if it looks like it pulls too much vertical, pull a horizontal one every once in a while and just put that modeling of those tones in, okay? Now, you can, this right here is a, what is it, an 1.5-inch scraper, a paint scraper. And, you know, I have all kinds, and this is one of my favorite ones too, one of these Warner knives. All the links, again, to this, the stuff that I use is all in the, it's all over in the video description below. So you'll hit, you know, I'll show you where I get these things here. Now, I can take, and I'll start with this one again, and reset some of those here, and I'll use different corners of my brush and just push a bit here and set up some of the rock faces here. And, you know, I just kind of read a little bit about, you know, where I see a light or a dark, and here, and just kind of quickly. Now, this 3/4 inch brush is just a bit big here for what I'm doing, so you might want to use like a 1/2 inch or something. But the size of the brush that you use is going to, you know, determine a lot of how the faces of your rocks, what they're going to look like, okay? So I'm going to switch down to my 1/2 inch here and step way back on your brush. Let's get this a little bit darker with just a touch of blue. So we change that tone a bit. Push up and down and create those rock faces here. And that's, you know, how much, you know, accuracy you're going to paint them with. That's up to you here. But I like to push in a couple of tones. Sometimes I'll pull them and add little things just with my, you could use your brush to add other little touches and crevices and stuff like that, just with the light corner of your brush here, you know, to just move some of that color around. But watch your shadows. The hardest thing, I think, in doing this, and we're going to put in a little bit of a shadow receding plane here into the rock here. So I want to use my brush in a couple of ways. I do love to set this fusion brush down flat and let the colors come off. Like here, you saw where I whispered that. See, that's a little too blended for me. So if I set the brush down flat, see how it gets a bit more interest into it? And that's what I like. So, and let's go a little bit more burnt sienna up here. Pull a few of that down. And I can quickly you don't have to be quick about it. We can add some open medium and not have to be quick at all. Let's model slightly lighter here and push some of that out here. I don't go to the highlight that I see, but I will, you know, add a little yellow and a little bit of light there, and so I can start, you know, picking it out. Now, see, that gives me a good thing, but there's other like little shadows that I'm missing there, and I can come back with a smaller brush, or depending upon how much more detail that I want to add, and I can, you know, get that shadow there a little darker here. I can use more of the, you know, the touch and the corners of the brush. There's a bit of an angle. That was way too dark. So we'll take that out. Here. I'll leave, you know, I don't lift it out. You know, sometimes I do, but a lot of times I just, if I make a mistake with a tone, which isn't very often, yeah it is, but if I make a mistake with a tone, I go ahead and use it, you know, and there's nothing wrong with just using that tone and incorporating it and building it that way. Now we'll put a little bit more shadow that we had here earlier back down in here. So you see right now my original shadows, when I'm putting them on those rocks and getting that, what those original shadows are, is just to give me that idea, and I refine it, and I may paint out and paint back and forth. It's called the moving edge. It's the moving edge of the painting. It's just like here, if I want to really recede those hills, I paint a moving edge back there, which I'll take some of my sky color back here, and I'll paint up into the sky, and then I'll paint the sky back down, or push the the sky back down in here. I want these edges back here very blurry, like that. I don't want a sharp focused edge, and that's what's going to cause them to recede. So sometimes I paint sky down, mountain up, back and forth, let those edges cross a few times, and then that gives you the what we call the moving edge, the more casual edge to the painting here. Now there's some nice light little planes up on the top of that other rock that we can just go ahead and push in to give some more interest to that particular rock there. That's a little perfect. So I'll just take another bit of light, maybe a bit of atmosphere into it, a bit of the blue here, and just put the mark. Now, it all depends. If I'm out there doing plein air or something, that is more than enough for me right now, that I've captured that particular edge. But or that particular tone or that particular look, that's more than enough. I've captured it. But if I'm in the studio painting and stuff, then I'll work that tone out a bit more, capture just a bit more, interest and stuff with it. And it's timing. It's all how much time you have. I'm a professional artist, and so it's how much time I put in it is reflected upon how much I make as an artist. So, but there are paintings I do that are, a lot of people say, what's your hobby? My hobbies are my grandchildren, my fishing, and painting. I also paint as a hobby when I paint my own paintings. Like I have a big easel over there on the other side of the studio, 40 feet away over there. And I have a painting on there I've been working on for about a month, which is long for me. But it's a painting that'll stay in our home. And I do those a couple times a year, work on big paintings and keep those because I love to paint. So I paint professionally and I paint for enjoyment, and it's a lot of fun. Let's put that little bit of light that we see right there into that rock and let that just kind of pull down there just a bit. That's kind of neat. It could have some burnt sienna into it. So, how much you're going to push, how much you're going to push into those faces and stuff like this. And, you can take a small brush and work in there a bit, to get some of those tones. That's all up to you, how much time that you put into it. I'm going to put a little bit of an advancing shadow plane right here. That'll advance that little bit of rock right there in front of the other one. And I'm going to reset some of my lighter, slightly different tone here. Nice light plane here. Let's drop down and drop that in here. Leave that up. See, I'll leave that just, and I like those broken edges up there along the edges of the rocks there. I like that. And let's take out that bit of light that I hit there. So sometimes I'll just come in and just tap little bits here, sideways. Here we have this bit that's let's pick up some more burnt sienna and a little bit of yellow here, touch of the blue. Model that on the brush. And let's just bring some more color down at an angle here. So we're bringing like that rock in there, standing up in front of this other one. So, and a little bit of light. So I'm just reading a few angles here of what I like about these rocks. And so I read a light tone. I read it kind of. Is it yellow? Is it sienna? Is it blue and cool here? And just add a bit more. I'm not trying to copy it by any matter of means, even though you can, you can go in there and get some of that, but I'm not trying to, do a super great job of copying it, because that's just going to stiffen me up. I just want to capture some of the pretty tones that I see in there and get those into this painting. Now I want a little more burnt sienna up there. And I want more of a broken edge like this. So I'm going to paint up into the sky just slightly and blur that just a bit here, like that. And I leave that horizontal, but I want it a little bit more vertical, so I'll take just a slight pulling stroke there and grab that. Now, yeah, so you can play with as much detail as you want to put in there. But I suggest you capture the feeling of it and move on, because let's grab some of this open medium right in here. Move on, because it's gonna, as we get other objects in here, it'll start looking really good. So there's no need to spend a bunch of time on it here. Let's block in some major areas. There's some shadows here. Let's get some of that in. Blue, burnt sienna, let's restate that. And I'm going to come up here, and you can see, boy, that shadow's a little dark. This is my control in front of my painting. And I can, that tone would look great up in here, and some of that, but it's a little dark for back there. And so I don't take it out. I'm just going to paint into it with some of my other colors here and start to lighten it up. And I'll start to use a lot of paint and just push those in here like this. If I'm doing a big studio painting, I will do this back and forth like this for hours, sometimes days. It all depends on, what's the purpose of the painting that I'm doing it for. But yeah, some paintings I'll work on quite a bit here. And some paintings I capture them. They get a great look really quickly. And it's you as the artist, you have to determine, just what's the purpose of the painting, how much time you put into it. Let's put a bit of an angle here, mottled color, so it's not like super perfect. Grab that angle that we see there. Let's head towards our burnt siennas here a bit and put in a bit of these other rocks right there, like that, coming up in front of that one here. Now, it's a little bit more powerful on this than I have, so I'm just going to increase the power of that angle there just a bit, so you can read that as a, backside hill there. A bit more. This one at this particular angle. So if I feel it's too smooth, I start setting the brush down just a bit more. Let's get a bit of that burnt sienna up there. Get some of those angles there. That's not too bad. Let's grab some of that medium beige and blue and stuff here. Get slightly different tone here. Drop into some of that siennas. See all the different tones. You can scrub a bit here. Get some of those rocks going. There's some nice shadow up there. Here. Of that particular rock. And now you have some more of that alluvial type plains and stuff coming down here, which I just might indicate here, like that. And then let's go back to that medium beige white, kind of, and push those and get that nice big forward plane here. But this is what I like when I use a lot of paint like that and push up into that. I get this kind of the coloring come together, a little fracturing of the edge that I'm pulling down there. So you get this high and low there, and that looks pretty good. I don't have to, this is my 1/2-inch brush, so it's giving me kind of a nice look there. And I used to work on that, smooth it out a bit. Now I leave that, and I want to change the tone slightly, so the next stroke that I do here doesn't have the same power or look to it here. It gives it a difference. And like I say, I'll repeat this several times here. So the tones change, the looks change, so you get this, you get the feeling of some of that playing there. And I'll put a little sienna in some of that here. Push that back just a bit. Tap your brush around here. So you get some of that is almost in shadow, and some of that can be out here in light a bit more. And we still have to add the vegetation and stuff to that. There. But you've seen me in other paintings start to add some of these like little planes like this, and I watch them pretty quickly. Now, that is climbing. It should be down a bit, so I'm going to pull this one down just a little bit more. See, it's a different color, put in a different tone. And so, as I'm doing this, in paintings, refining back and forth, I'll change the tone slightly and do it again and do it again, and that's what gives you, see all these nice little interests now of colors going on in there, see? So I'll change this tone again. Let's pull down at a little bit shallower angle here. But now, by doing that, see, I get all of those little differences there, and each time I do that, some people think, oh wow, that just takes so long. No, each time I do that, it's adding interest. And as an artist who, I sell my paintings, and I've sold my paintings anywhere from $500 to $20,000. And it's the difference between how much work I put in that is the difference between, how much that I sell my paintings for. It's how much work I put into them here. And, how much, and, there's a lot of paintings that I do that I like the $500 version more than the $20,000 version of it. But, it's they're different, and the amount of work that you put in and stuff. So, yeah, let's add a few more little dark touches back up in through here, into some of this mountain, into some of these crevices and stuff like that. Some of those other tones we see here, and bring that back. Here, go over some of those planes just a bit, and break some of those edges, little tones here. Remember, cross edges. Break those edges, cross those edges. Let's get a little more yellow right into there, and pull that light tone back down there. There, like that. So those are coming in at two different angles here, and you can work these back and forth, like pull the shadow down a little bit here, down a little bit, leave some of that so you get that nice rocky edge there. Some of that light tone can, like I did before, can appear back up here, and this is where you can start getting some textures in there as well, if depending on how much you're going to paint into your rocks here. That's where you can start getting some textures. Don't paint too long there, Dave, before you change tones. I tell that to myself quite a bit, because you always think, oh wow, that looks a little great, so let's just put more of it on everywhere, and then it doesn't look so great anymore because you've put too much of it on. You got to change those tones. That's the beauty of it. Where are you changing those tones? There. So put a little interest, a little bit of that shadow with some blue and stuff into it. Right back up in there. Get some of that shadow tone. Crossing slightly different there. So, yeah, that all works in there. Now, let's put in a nice, let's grab some of this and some blues and some greens and some yellows. Let's model this all up here. This will be wild for you. Let's grab some of that beige. Okay. We're just going to kind of get that burnt sienna in there. Model that all up here. And just tap and push these colors around here to create that edge of that the water line there. So we'll get a little more burnt sienna in there. Get some of those tones in there. Don't lose that angle. Sometimes you just drag that back into that angle there, but don't lose that angle. Let's, matter of fact, let's just go to our wonderful scraper here. So this is some of the stuff you can do. Clean up some of your area here. Grab some of those tones, and let's just pull that right down here at that angle. So you see I turn my scraper sideways here. Let's just quickly scrape in. See, this gives you some nice mottled tone here. You're going to refine it with your brush, but this gives you some nice mottly tone. Matter of fact, we can scrape some of that right up here as well. Sometimes I pull down, sometimes pull across, and it just gets rid of the white of the board or the canvas that you're working on and get some of this nice tone in there. Now, while that's wet, because I like to incorporate it, let's just take and incorporate some of those yellow greens and burnt siennas and stuff like that that we're going to have out here into this area. And I'm going to step way back on my brush, and you can see this area here, and just kind of, I'm an impressionist painter. I just want to tap and push here and create a little bit of those colors and stuff there, okay? And I can refine it later. Right now I just want to get some tones in there. Refining can come later. I don't want to slow down. I want to paint with a certain speed, because that's what keeps it nice and loose, is painting with this certain speed. So there's some green. So identify the tone. There's greens and yellows right up along this shoreline here. And see, I'll blur it right down into that water there for a bit, so I don't make a perfect shoreline there. Just blur it. Just take your brush and push it. That's why I really like the fusions here, because they'll blur. They're a soft brush that responds so well to your hand, and then going down and scraping. You can hear that. I'm scraping that, and that gives you a different look there, see? Let's lighten that up a bit. Bit of yellow, lighten that up. Bit of our open medium. But I'm using so much paint, it's going to stay wet for quite a while. Put a few horizontals and verticals in here. Boom. Just like that. Get some of that coloring in there. The Southwest colors, you know, it's just, and get that medium beige out here with that. Good color. We want to be careful not to get too dark back there. So, and you can always add some of that nice sky color. See how that just, a little bit of sky color in there just gives that here some atmospheric look to it. Here, let's get some of that light and a little sky here and just drop in. We're going to cover some of this up with the tree, but we'll drop some of that in for right now. Some horizontals and verticals there, and then we will add a bit here, a bit of our siennas and stuff to it. Here, find that shadow that I liked right there. Push it around. I'm not going to do too much on that side because it's going to go right into that tree. Now, right back up in here, you know, you can mist it, you know, like with some extra light from the sky, so it's a lighter gray. That's a good thing to do back there. It puts it in a bit misty, as this is going to fall away around the back there, okay? And then what you do is you just start to increase the tone, a little more gray, green, a little more burnt sienna, until you create the plane right up in front of it here, right like that. So now what you've done is you created a receding plane there in the back and the front plane coming forward. And if you need to, I'm going to rinse my brush here for a second. If you really want that to go back to your blues, your light blues, get that light blue-gray and increase that right back in here a bit. And that'll push back even further some of those areas. Now, push that back just a little too far for what I like to do. But I won't leave, I'll blend these out. Not blend, I'll merge these colors together. I don't like the word blend. I like to put that tone on there like that. And so I'm watching here. So this is dark. It's got to become more like the sky. If I want to get atmosphere, it's got to become more like the sky. It's got to go that way. So I got to make it softer. And then these are a lot of edges. And so I've got to make the edges here a little bit more blurry here as they go back. So I can have a little bit more edge there. But it's got to become a little bit more blurry as they go back to get that depth in there, okay? That's what they do. And let's just grab some of this light. Let's get some green and yellow into that. Some yellow, a little burnt sienna. And just grab a bit of that. See, I'm just going to model a bit of that through like that. We'll do more specific bushes and all that kind of stuff in a little bit later. But now, step back, take a look at that. Yeah, I'm starting to capture some of the look that I want to capture with it, okay? Nowhere near done, but some of the interest and stuff is there, okay? Let's get some more of these yellows and greens, a little bit more precise, perfect, brighter here. More tonal, so it's, just yellows and greens and thicker paint right up in through here. Let's just grab some of that, because that is, so you read it more green and then more gray back there. That's what you want to do. Let's take that softer, atmospheric, gray it down, blues, whites into it. Nice soft, just a little bit of that. And add just a touch here and there around the edge and around the corner there. So that's going to go, just tap that in. I'll go to a smaller brush here in just a minute, but I do love painting as long as possible with a larger brush. I'm going to take some of that as a light. That's a little too light, but kind of like what's happening there. I'll take a little browns and stuff through here. Right like that. That's a good little plane that's starting to develop there. A little more bit of that light. Now, flat onto the brush. Scraper would also work great in there as well. Let's grab some of that little bit of light and just add some of that right up here. See, I like the scrape through. See the variation of the tones that you get there when you do that, see? And we'll grab some of this green and burnt sienna here. Break that right along the edge here. And like I say, I'm going to change some of this and intensify and, add a few rocks and a few more things going on here. But I want to leave that kind of broken edge of the shoreline and the color that I have there. I want to leave that a little bit broken. Let's drag some of that right in there. And see, I just break that edge there like that. Using that corner of your brush and pushing, and the ferrule of the brush is sliding right along the edge. See, it just gives you such a nice look. And we can use that for the base of some of these bushes and stuff here. There, like that. And you really create that look of dirt and stuff just by giving that angle every once in a while, like we did on the other side there. So I'll lighten up. Let's go with a little, you could go yellows, medium beige, burnt sienna. You can use all those colors. Just get some nice tones in there. And we'll drop some thicker paint in there. As I come forward in my painting, I'm going to start painting with some thicker paint here as well. So I'll grab this nice little shoreline look here. Nice little edge here through. Let's push just a bit of that out here again. A little bit of paint there, like that. That works. See, it's building. That's the big thing, is you got to build it, and you got to build it, and you got to build it. And the thing is, you got to start using a lot of paint. But even here, where I'm very neutral, you'll see the tones changing, and I'm looking between my greens and my burnt siennas and my yellows here, you know. And it's for palette maintenance. It might be really good for you to put out some yellows and some burnt siennas, and then some greens and stuff up here, so that you had different areas to grab here as you work some of these tones here. Let's get rid of a little bit of this extra. There comes a point where I just got to get rid of the white of the canvas here, and I like to do that. Just get rid of it. And I just love scraping that tone. See the different look that gives. Just coming back, just taking this and just scraping over some of what I did earlier there. And so now you get all of these tones, you know, all of these tones happening. And of course we're going to want some, you know, darker. Let's get a little burnt sienna and blue here. Darker areas, and we'll paint some rocks and stuff like that right up front. Up in the very front is where our darkest colors have got to go into the painting. And so, you know, adding some things, even if your photo doesn't show it, because remember, not all photos make great paintings. You know, it's in the photo here, it does show some dark tone up there, so I can go ahead and add a bit right into some of the areas that I see there. And let's just break those edges a bit. There. Okay, that's the impression of it. You know, when I first started, that was so hard for me. I was like, oh, you know, and take it off. And, you know, now I just go in there and just attack it, because I realize it doesn't make a difference. In the final painting, it doesn't make a difference here. Let's get rid of some of that right over there. That's pretty good. And there'll be some light areas of rocks there. We can go ahead and start indicating a bit of those. So I'll start these up, and you know, then I'll go in, like when I quickly and impressionistically paint rocks, I usually put on the lights like that. Then I'll go in and paint some shadow tones, and then I'll go in and paint the light tones, you know, on top of that. So it depends on where it is, you know, how much precision I'm going to paint that with. I'll go back to my smaller brush here. But let's take a little bit of shadow, burnt sienna, and I'll change this over a little bit, maybe a little yellow and red here. I'll get some nice shadow, because I want lots of shadow tones. I want them going burnt siennas to blues to greens and stuff. And so I start to read a bit onto the rocks here, if I'm going to, and how big I'm going to do the rocks. And of course, if you don't have much time, your rocks tend to get a little bit bigger. But I'll shadow the bottom and to the left side, since my highlight, my light source, is coming from the right. So I'll be shadowing into the left, and I'll do a few other little areas here, a few other little marks of it to kind of carry the tone and break up some of the other little ground and stuff like that that you see there. And we're going to want a bit more shadow, like right across here where we're going to put that tree in. I do like that tree, so I'm going to add that here, right in there like that. And you know, then I come back with a softer, what I call a receding color, which is the halfway between the shadow and the light here, a nice receding tone that I'll just put a few marks here right between the light and the dark here. And then I'll go back to my shadow, and I'll go back to my light and repeat some. The big thing is here is trying not to be too repetitious with your marks, your strokes. You might want to come like you see in that river there. Come right out here and put a more precise little rock. Let's give it a little bit of a shadow there. So you can have, let's give it a touch more light right there. And just kind of round it over a bit. You can angle them or round them over a bit, but you're going to have a light plane. Or see how this is lighter than that side over there, and then the shadow side. So once you, three values, 3 planes in a real quick painting like this. And so some of this you just might want to just model around like that. Grab some of the light and just kind of touch that around. And it'll start looking like rocky little areas there. And every once in a while, put in a bit bigger one, maybe a bit more light here. Boom. Start some of that. And this is the part that, you know, that can really take some time, depending on the, you know, how much you're going to put into the painting, or how much detail and stuff you're going to put into painting. I'll put a little bit more on this. I don't want to take up too much camera time. We're at an hour, so I don't want to take up too much camera time with it, because it's just that. It's just working those values and stuff. So I'll do like I did with the last one and add just a touch more work to it. Not too much, though. And let's get just a bit of this light there. That works. And so as you get further back, you can, you know, you can do more things. I mean, you can just let modeling take over, and you don't have to put all that little detail. The detail of the individual rocks and stuff only really belongs up into the front. Back up in here, we're just going to let the colors model and cross each other. Okay, so they don't have to do so much to it here. Let's take some of this green and burnt sienna, some of these colors, maybe a touch of blue, touch of red, touch of yellow, just kind of model this all. And just ever so lightly whisper through back here. See, it just puts it on broken. Fractured, what we call fracturing the edge there. Like that. Okay. And then we can, you could use a big brush, small brush, you know, it's all detail work. Get some of your greens out here. Push some of your greens right into that to break those edges. Like I said, see, it just adds some of that interest there. Let's get that bit of that dark right in there. Just a bit of that. Not too dark, Dave. Break those, you know, let those colors move around there just a bit. You see it? Too much dark, just take a light right over it. See, take some of it out. Just tap that around and move it. Move the color. So model this in your brush like this. Move the color, tap, push around here. Get, you know, not perfect, imprecise. Try to always vary your marks. And that's really hard to do. It really is. But we might want to add, just like we have in the photo there, a little bit of a rocky edge there, something like that. And we'll get some lighter tone, and then you put in a nice little half tone here. Right like that. Okay, and nice little half tone right in between the two to round some of them. And of course, do it again. But I'll take some of those little marks. Just add I like to have some of the directional lines. That tone I like. The direction is great. It's a little dark, so I'm just going to lighten that up and push that in that way. there like that. Get going around the corner there. Maybe a bit of the green there hitting around the corner. Let's get, I'm going to rinse that out of my brush because I'm going to push in, and you don't see this because of the angle of that particular photo. So I'm going to use a little artistic license and put in a little bit of sky blue, a little bit of but gray it down just a bit, maybe a bit of that violet into it. Let's just push. That is a little bit too blue-green, not quite light enough. So let's go over here a little lighter. I want it almost a lighter, little violet color. That's a pretty color. And I'm just going to break that a little bit like that. So you see a touch of it there. I don't want to create a straight line by any means, and I want to break the edge there like that so you get that color. So it's not perfect. It's get that color. Let's drag a bit of that right out through here, just across. Nice horizontal. Every once in a while you hear me talk about getting a nice strong horizontal, and I'm going to put a nicer horizontal probably right in the water there. I'm going to go back to my really favorite brush for painting this, the 1/2 inch, and take a little blue and violet here, but it's a little more, it's got a little bit of sienna in it. And let's redefine it. I'm going to be looking right about in here to capture some of that mid-tone kind of swirly bit there. Now, I love the feel of the open medium when I'm doing this, so swirl it back, and you see I'm just taking no more than a couple strokes because I don't want it to blend. I'll push it here. Let's pull some down. I like to pull down just a bit because that causes a blur into the water. Okay, and that worked out pretty good. Let's get just a touch of that over here. Right, let the shadow of that water there and the shadow of that shoreline kind of come together there. There we go. Pull that down a bit. There. That works. So take a look at that. Kind of looks like you know what you're doing sometimes. You know, it's just, you know, we have this is the best way to really kind of explain it to you guys. I have base techniques that I follow, and then you adjust them just a little bit here and there for each painting situation, and then that becomes your signature, you know, as an artist. That becomes your signature, how you do things, you know. I'm going to slide this over a bit more violet. Going to get that nice open medium into that. That'll slide these colors really nice, and it could be just a touch lighter. See if I do like that color that's right in here on the photo. Here, that nice violet there. Right there like that. I do like that in there. And then we'll push a little more greenish color into it. Change its tone just a bit. Break this right up into this edge here. So, you know, I'm going to take a bit of that darker sienna. I like the sienna and the blues and stuff in here. This is where we're really going to get our contrast, and I love how that open medium really slides it across, almost like that indirect technique of thin shadows. See here, just pull that across there just a bit like that. Okay, thin shadows. So I get that open medium, and it just does wonderful things. I'm just going to model these two together, that shadow and that. Just push a bit more of that in. Here. That's going pretty good. Bit more of the burnt sienna. Let's go to a clean kind of area. Burnt sienna blue, open medium. Let's just whisper a bit of that up and down, almost like this is a reflection of the back hills there. Through. Let some of that lighter violet come across right into that. Now it's, I lift the pressure on the brush if I want them to kind of incorporate a little bit. So you incorporate them a little bit and they will, it looks like they're blending, but you'd have to go a couple more strokes in each direction to blend it. Just to lift the pressure and incorporate that here. That's pretty good. I want to increase that nice dark. Sometimes I'll thin out even the open medium and the darks and stuff with a bit of the extender. That gives it even a little thinner, less, it's more of it's almost like a thin glaze, but it has power because of the thickness of the open medium and stuff, but it's almost like an indirect glaze. See, it's a beautiful way to capture that water effect there. Let's pull some down because I want to create just a touch of rapids right there. Not much, just a bit here. So that'll work. Let's get a bit darker here. Bit of the burnt sienna, some of that open medium, and then thin just a bit. So I like to use the both. So this puts on, see, that it doesn't destroy everything with it. It just slides on so much. It just causes you, that open medium just slides so well over the surface there. See? And it just allows you, and you're building some of those tones that are, that are in there. So overall with the water, what I'm doing is rather than getting too much of the violets and stuff here, I'm making it a little bit more violet than I have in my sky and stuff, but I am adding just a little bit more blue and stuff to what I find in the photo. Now I'm going to lighten up. We're going to go with that violet and blue here. I'm going to lighten up and a bit more violet here. I want to get up around an 8 or so here, and let's add some open medium to it, and let's just whisper that across. Yeah, that's good color. As a nice, get it a little bit more horizontal here, as a good strong horizontal for a good depth of field here. Push some of that through there. Maybe a little touch of it back here up against the shoreline. Little dab of it here and there. Okay. And we can go more violet and light here. Okay. Let's add just a whisper of that. Push that in. Yeah, that'll work. And if you get too much or do anything, just take a little bit of your medium color and just come through just like that to soften it out. See, you can see the differences of the tone coming in there, see? And I want to preserve some of that. Now, let's take some of that, bit of that dark right up along the shoreline. Take that out. So we want to keep that light coming through the center part of the river there. There we go. Just like that. And sometimes I would pull down. Sometimes I would like take some of these, these beautiful siennas, yellow siennas, and drop those into the water right in here like that. So you catch just a bit of a, a nice little bit of a reflection there. And that looks really nice as well. So just a little touch of it every once in a while to push through and pick up some of those. And so if I feel like something like an area is too blue, I'll just pull some through. Even though it doesn't show it in the photo, I do it here. Now, let's take our smaller brush, and remember I like to start the rocks out kind of light. So I'm going to start up with some of my lighter grays here. So I started one right there. Let's, and this is the hardest part I think about painting, is not to set up a pattern here. We want to just do a couple of different versions of it here, of just some rocks coming across, because I think that's going to add interest here to the painting. You can just see a few, kind of like the area of this, you know, in the, let's change tone a bit, kind of like this in the photo. And so I see that, and this makes me want to add a few more. Now, that's a lot going on. So now what I do is I'll take my shadow, maybe a little bit blue, burnt sienna here, and let's paint out a bit smaller, tap some of it out, and sometimes just a lot of little small ones. Something like this though, you know, it's up near the center of the painting, and this is something that I would do a few times, several times to get some of that, you know, get some more interest and stuff with it. Now we'll take some blue, more to the blue side, and let's come in here and paint out, shadow out some of this. Boom, just start, and try not to follow again a pattern. Just start taking some of it out here. Boom, some nice shadow there. Shadow, water, shadow. But you know, we leave some of these other little marks and stuff here because as we pull across here, because that just gives, you know, some of these rocks may be just underneath the surface. And so this starts to create that little look of just underneath. Pull some down, okay? And sometimes, you know, I'll take a, and it all depends on the painting. Sometimes I'll take a bigger, softer brush, pull down just a bit, pull across once or twice here like that, and blur those right into the water there like that. See? Blur that color movement. Then go back in and set it up. Now this is when you start to get a lot of paint, and it really starts to become kind of difficult to get some of that that color in there. You know, when there's a lot going on, and so sometimes, you know, that's the beauty of acrylics. You can just let it dry up a bit and then come back and do it. Now I'm going to walk down some of this light down through here. Right up through there like that to create, so we'll take this nice violet blue kind of color here. We'll walk a bit of that into the water there. And again, you know, after we set this all up, then we turn around and paint it out with some dark here. So you set some of that nice light movement. The more white you go, the more rapids that you start to create. So, you know, I don't want to create a whole bunch of rapids. You see me do that on other things. I just don't want to do that too much here. I just want some nice faster water, the look of some faster water here, right in like that. And I'll paint back bit of that out. Sometimes just paint it out, push it out. And I took out quite a few rocks, and when I do that, then I'll go back and add a few little bits. And, you know, there's all kinds of ways. Sometimes I put little rocks in with, I'll put little rocks in with a palette knife, just kind of scrape the area and then paint and lift off. That works so well too. I'll have to show you that in another painting because it really does work well. Here, just get some of those in, little bits here. There, tap, tap, and the edge of the brush, and little shadow, little burnt sienna into there. Just add so much, but it's real thick of paint right now, so it's really hard. So this is when I usually will let that dry a few minutes, and then we'll come back and put some more. You can put some other little rocks, like look to the photo back there. There's just some nice little areas of nice little rocks like you could have right back here that's just going to add some interest. Okay, put on the light, put on the shadow here, and the shadow would be to the right side, or excuse me, to the left side here. Little bits, and grab some of this nice color, kind of model up your rocks here, give you some of that interest. Turn some of this right into rocks. You can't get too many. I do like the sand look as well, so I want to eliminate all of that, but just real quickly there you can get that. And then now it's up into the front and stuff that I have up here, there's some rabbit brush and stuff right up here, and I'll do that with like the edge of the brush and some of my yellows and light colors, and push some of that up here like this. Try to, right up over your blues here, get some different edges, pushing around. Sometimes I use a little bristle brush and stuff, but I really like an old fusion brush to get some of that nice variation. Get good variation there around here like that. Here. And grab some of this and create some of the brush. And when I paint brush like this, and this is just old sticky paint here, you see it just coming off in different layers there. And this, when I do something like this, I spend a lot of time, working colors, tones back and forth until I get all of this movement and color and interest back here, just like this. And I'll work it several times and build the bushes and stuff. And there's all different kinds of ways you've seen me, do that. And I love this brush. That's why I have it out here. This is an old round brush that I took a hammer to and hammered it flat, and it just does magnificent brush and stuff as well. But it's quite fun. So I'm gonna add a little bit of this. This is just gonna take me. This is just what I'm gonna do. Work some different colors. After I work one color and stuff for a while, I'll come back and put in some horizontals. You see me do this in the 30 days of 30-day landscape challenge. Or the landscape challenge videos that I did. I use these kinds of techniques here. Push back in some horizontals. Add some of the nice brush and stuff, and then come back and push some horizontals. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to add those, and then we'll come back and I'll add a little bit more to the rocks here, and then I'll come back and I'll put that tree and stuff in the side. I'll show you how to put a good look for that tree, okay? So we just don't take up too much time. So it's just going to be a repetition of that. You don't need to see that. Then we'll take a look at the finishing of it, all right? Okay, I'll see you back here in a few minutes. Hi everyone, welcome back. Okay, so I just built up, I need to shadow those rocks and stuff again, but I went through here again and I added just a little bit more through there. I even added a little bit of the gray color right back through here, which I thought was nice, and built up through here, but it needs to have a touch more light here and there. And that's usually what I do, is I come back with some lights, some nice warm lights, and hit some of those areas like on forward rocks. And you have to, with acrylics, you have to do it a few times because they dry down, and so they dry about a value or so darker. So you do want to repeat them a couple times. But anyway, I wanted to show you. I've got a few more bushes and stuff to put in here, but over on the other side there, it's kind of hard to slightly off camera. Is kind of a tree. And so I just want to put in a general statement of that tree. I'm going to take some pine green and burnt sienna. This is my number 6. And I'm going to do it just kind of like a little scrubby tree here. I'm just going to do it rough, which matches a lot of my brush technique here. Just holding this brush kind of flat, building it out a little bit here, leaving some holidays, which will be opening areas. Change the tone a little bit, add a little yellow to it as well here, and build it out kind of here in clumps. We'll drop it right down into a shadow here. But out to the edges here, you can let them get a little wispy. Just rise up onto the point of this little fusion and let them get a little wispy here. Let's add a little deeper shadow, a little more burnt sienna and a little bit of blue. You can even cool it with a touch of that red violet. Haven't used that too much in this painting. Drop in a nice cooler shadow. Light's coming from, let's add a little more violet to that. Light's coming from the right. So we shadow everything here onto the left here like that. That'll see, that's going to help add some a nice depth to the painting. Now let's come back out here. We'll add a little bit of light. I love it when my paints get nice and sticky like this. I love that. And we'll just push around some light here. Model the brush, model the colors on here. So it's going to get a little bit of that blue in there and stuff as well. Model these colors around. Keep the light, just a few touches of it over here to the left side, but keep the light coming on to the right. This helps the viewer also see, okay, there's the light source. Let's go a little bit lighter. Lighter, you go smaller, heavier, over to this side. A bit more yellow into that. Here, just model and push here. I'm not using like what I've done before, all different kinds of brushes, the fan brushes, that kind of stuff. This is just a nice way to get a nice painterly. Come back with a medium, a little more green, push that through. If you get too much color in one area, just push through and paint it out. Work them back and forth here until you get kind of a nice look. And if you feel like it's too heavy, you can always, but this bush is really heavy. See if I can get that over on the camera here. See, it's really heavy. It's quite heavy here. So it's thick. And it's a little bit more burnt sienna into it, stuff which we could add. You could just put a little burnt sienna into this. Get a little more burnt sienna tones in there. That goes well. Just kind of tap and push it around a touch with that, and a few darks onto the left side, but just a few, but most of that nice light and yellows. Even put a little Hansa into that. Get a nice light yellow green here. And just tap through lots of tones here. A few areas of the light. Now, we're going to take these colors down. Let me just push in this last bit of light here. We'll take these, yeah, that's good. Just some ideas. Now, if you feel that it is like too blobby or something like that, which happens from time to time, take yourself a larger fusion flat brush and just tap and push into it with the larger brush. That takes that away and gives you a different kind of movement into the brush. Now, every artist is going to have a different way in which they paint trees, and it's all going to be on your hand more than anything else. I like to let something like that tack up and come back and push in some areas of dark into it to open up the tree. The darks are really helpful in establishing volume into the tree there. So I like to do that. That's one of my favorite things. And I'll look for other little things like getting a nice stroke of burnt sienna down there. Why is that there? It's because it's a good harmony color for the painting, and it just goes, it just works. And I've learned that over time, especially as an impressionist, that you just push some of those things in and they just work. Let's get a bit of this greens here, a little bit more yellows into them. Get a bit of those out here. That tree's kind of all by himself in that photo, so we can give him some friends over here. And some bushes and stuff like that that would look kind of nice. Put a few lights out there. Here. And then get there with a bit of dark as well. So, how much you put in, how much work you put into the final details and coming through and working your tones again and again and again, that's kind of up to you, as the artist, how much time you're going to take to it. If I think for a painting this size, that works pretty good. So my, total time here filming this is a little less than 2 hours. That's not too bad for this. I mean, there are some things that I would start to do if I wanted to add more to it, like let's get some of these thin shadows that we originally had out there, and adding smaller little touches of some of those thin shadows out like this. Every once in a while, maybe pull down just a bit. See, those thin shadows just add so much. Do not go too much back down in here. Oh, and that's the other thing I did. I added a little bit of light gray right up here. And the light gray was blue with some of my mountain color. And then I drug it right over the edge of that rock face there. And that helps, really bring it back. And, you might want to help this whole thing come forward, we might want to take a mottley kind of color here and work a bit of this edge here, just a touch here, to bring some shadows and some more stuff going on that edge there. Maybe a little yellow burnt sienna. You just have some fun with it, and you paint it very impressionistically. I just love to paint the impressionism of this. And if you enjoyed this one, if you haven't gone over and painted the Colorado River one that I did, it's over in my, I think I did for the, my chair keeps going down today, so it looks like I'm falling down. It's over in the playlist. There's a 12 landscape challenge, and it's over in that playlist, and painting the Colorado River, which has some cliffs and stuff like this. A little bit more detailed, a little bit different, and a lot of fun to paint. So go over and check that one out as well. Quite a bit of fun, but it's kind of neat to do some of these. Now I have some beautiful cactus ones that we'll do. We'll have those coming up, and but I have some more florals, and that portrait we have to get out also. So there's some other ones that are still coming, but just take some of those tones and push them through here like this. See, the more little bit of work you do like that, the prettier the composition starts to come. And you start to push some of these rocks and bushes back from each other with some little angles and some little strokes like that helps separate out. And you can get a heck of a lot more interest that way, okay? You can add some, if you want your water to get a little bit more movement. Now in the photo it doesn't have that, but you can always take, I wouldn't take pure white, I'd take a version of white, and once this starts to tack up, you just add a few little marks of that with the edge of your brush there, see, just like that. And the water starts to take on a little bit more power, a little bit more movement, and that's all up to you at the end. And make sure you get some nice darks, some nice lights right up here in the front. This is where your depth of your dimension is coming from, right up here. So I'll make sure that I have some nice core darks, dark blue. I'm creating a whole new language. Dark blue and burnt sienna together right out here, right in between those rocks and stuff that creates more contrast and interest. And just have a bit of fun with it. You can just soften that down with a little bit of your medium beige, stuff like that. Take a look at it at that camera at 8 feet. That's not too bad. That's not too bad, I don't think. Okay. Hopefully you had a good time with it. And again, make sure when you have questions and check out the links in the video description. There was one that I forgot to put that in and got a nice comment. I've checked it. There's not there. Well, yeah, I forgot to put it in. But in the videos, always look to the description. We like to put a little link, so everything that I use is over there. Okay, and if you have any kind of questions, you can always email us at jansenartstudio@aol.com. That's our email address, where you go right to the office. And for painting questions and stuff like that, you can go to Jansen Art Online and just hit the contact page. And that email comes right to me, so whenever you have painting questions and stuff. Or you can write a comment down there, and I'll answer you in the comments. Because if you look through there, I read and answer. I try to answer all of the comments and stuff. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days because there gets to be quite a few. But I try to do that, okay? And we really appreciate your support. Really appreciate if you hit that subscribe button and you hit that like button and make that comment, because that helps a lot. Because YouTube, they control how videos go out by how many likes and comments and stuff like that it gets, okay? Because and that makes sense. It's just good business. If somebody likes it and stuff, they'll show more of it. So help us out by liking it, sharing our videos, making some comments. We really would appreciate that, okay? So next, we have some more. I have animals and people and the florals and all that kind of stuff. Lots more coming. And we're going to paint a true Southwest with the cactus and all that kind of stuff too as well. All right? Okay, I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for joining me.